June 14, 2022, 3:56 a.m. in a large gated community where it had its own grave site in Texas. Police were called to the area to inspect the community's graveyard, which was a quarter-mile away. Locals were hearing people scream as they would pass by the gated area, worried that some adolescent kids were vandalizing the tombstones and mausoleums. 2 officers arrived on the scene and parked their squad car at the graveyard's entrance and proceeded on foot. With their flashlights at the ready, they walked the grounds up and down, making sure no one was around doing things they shouldn't be doing, but no one was to be found. As they approached the center of the graveyard, they decided to check the Hall Mausoleum, which was large and made of marble. It held several hundred bodies within. Upon opening the door, the 2 officers heard the sound of footsteps walking around the corner, quickly reacting, expecting to see a teen running the halls of the build. They turned a corner and found no one. Feeling a little spooked, given the place they were in, they tried their best to make light of the situation, but once more they heard the sound of a voice grunting, as if someone was clearing their throat. They quickly made their way around a few corners of the large hall, and yet again found nothing. Having enough scares for one night, the 2 officers made their way back to the main entrance. But as soon as they turned the last corner, they heard the sound of someone making a wailing sound, followed by a thumping. They shined their flashlights behind them, but that wasn't the direction of the sound was coming from. It came from within the marble tombs a few feet away. The one officer decided to leave the mausoleum and walk back to the car as he had enough scares for one night. But the remaining officer was feeling fed up, thinking maybe of the supposed kids was playing a prank and somehow managed to get inside one of the tombs. Stubborn to prove himself, he banged the back of his flashlight against the marble grave, shouting curses. But the moaning from within got louder, and the thumping got heavier. Stepping back a foot as he shined his light at the name of the person, which read Mary Harkness, 1967-2020. The officer slowly put his ear against the stone and the voice of a woman crying within, and what sounded like kicking within her casket. The officer's heart started to pound with fear as all the blood drained from his face. He slowly began to back off as he started to hear more screaming coming from front. Another tomb, another followed, until the crowd of tombs from all over within the mausoleum started thumping with their own horrific screams. The sound became maddening for the officer as he ran out from the building and down the walkway to the car where his partner was standing in disbelief. The community security pulled up in their own cart, followed by a few of the residents who were on an evening walk. All heard the screaming and thumping coming from the mausoleum. The screams wouldn't stop and continued throughout the night, stirring up a crowd of people from the community who all stood at the gates of the cemetery, watching and listening to the faint screams, murmuring with one another in disbelief at what they were witnessing, even as some cried, thinking it could be someone they knew and buried there. As the sun began to rise, the screaming had slowly come to a stop, and the 2 officers, too shaken to speak on the subject, left the area in a hurry and never returned. The screaming within the mausoleum never happened again, but as a safety measure, someone within the community had a priest come by the graveyard to bless the mausoleum and grounds, hoping to keep the dead from screaming once more and to continue their rest. This story is from true events, and the identity of the community and its location is hidden due to the community's strict confidentiality rights. Paranormal investigators are deterred from entering the community, and if this place is ever found, then please respect the privacy of the community. I wasn't the nicest person in my teens. I was the type of teen who would steal and smoke cigarettes, drink on school nights, while causing public destruction in my small town, along with many others, so I was known to the local police. One evening, after some light drinking with some friends, I decided to walk home and try to find some cars to break into along the way while still half cut. I wasn't drunk enough to stagger, but just enough to know what was what. Around 1 a.m. in the morning, walking down the stretch of road, dark and somewhat cold. No luck of finding any cars without alarms, and just said the hell with it, and walked home to get some sleep. As I was kicking one of my beer cans on the pavement, I suddenly see light at my feet, followed by the sound of a police car siren. I sigh, feeling annoyed, knowing it's Officer Daniels. I stop with my hands up, and Daniels, who is friends with my dad, comes up behind me, shining his flashlight around my feet, and notices the can. Kicking around your evidence, I see. You know your father is gonna kick your ass, right? I chuckle as he sniffs around me, getting the hint of beer off my breath. Yeah, what else is new? Can a kid just have a good time? He takes my wrists and outs the handcuffs on me. I give no resistance, knowing what to do in these situations, since I've been in them for most of my youth. We start walking back to his car with no need for a breathalyzer test. I stand against the car as he searches my pockets and takes out my cigarettes and lighter, along with loose change, and places them on the hood. My head leaning back, nearly falling asleep as he opens the back door and shoves me inside. I sit up and rest my head on the fence within the car. Being the rebellious teen I am, I smile and begin to ask stupid questions, trying to vex him as good as I can, and as always, he ignores me. He begins typing into his computer and talking on the radio when suddenly there was a sudden stop in the wind. All the trees come to a sudden stop, and an eerie silence fills the air, which we both took notice. Considering the cool autumn wind around this time of year never let up at all. This was unusual. We start to feel a cold chill, not the kind you get from a cold night, but this one we could both feel in our senses, like something was wrong. I immediately started to sober up at the strange feeling we both got. He looks back at me. Hey kid, you feel what I'm feeling? I nod my head as I look out the back window and reply, yeah, what the hell is that? This ain't right, dude. He shakes his head as I shook mine. Both start to feel a sharp headache coming on seemingly from out of nowhere. Body starts to get the chills, and a slow building aching pain in the muscles started to form in the both of us. I just happened to look forward at the front windshield, and my eyes widened with fear with what I was seeing. Look there. The hell is that thing? You see it? Officer Daniels pinches the skin between his eyes and looks up at the direction I mentioned, and he himself could not believe it. Two thin beings staring back at us in a short distance, standing just out of the headlights' range. Their eyes were round and black with small mouths and nostrils. Round heads with kind of grew out the side of their temples. They must have been at least 7 feet tall with 3 fingers on each hand and foot. They stood on the road observing us and occasionally looking at one another and back at us again. The headaches only got worse even as they started walking towards the car. Daniel sat with his hand on the steering wheel like he was about to try and make a break for it and run this tall suckers over, but from what I could tell, fear had frozen every fiber in his body as I screamed at him to put the pedal to the metal. I began to feel dizzy from the headache. My vision started to spin out of control to the point of feeling to pass out right then and there, and from what I can tell, Daniels passed out from the same symptoms as his head was slumped forward, with his hands dropped to his side. I started to keel sideways in the back seat, but could still sort of see as I squinted my eyes slightly while trying to stay awake. I take notice to one of these creatures leaning down and looking into the window and placing its hand on the glass as much as I wanted to. I couldn't scream or fight. My way out of this feeling. I looked into this thing's big, round, black eyes even as it tapped its hand against the glass, while moving its mouth and pointing down the road for whatever reason. I then started to get the weird feeling that this thing was reading my every thought of fear, and the more it stood there, the more I felt my mind was being molested, like it was going through every memory I had in my mind. I started to see slight flashbacks of myself when I was young, and I couldn't fight it, helpless and scared at what was gonna happen next. The next thing I knew, there was a sudden bright flash of light, and for a split second, the creatures were gone. Blink of an eye type of thing. I immediately sat up screaming and kicking the door. Daniels, wake up, man! Banging my head against the fence as he jerks up, grabbing the steering wheel, screaming with his own sense of fear. What? Where'd they go? That happened. I rest my head against the window, catching my breath, and all that ugly feeling we both felt had started to disappear from our bodies, both snapping out from the headaches, and Daniels gets out from the car to catch his breath, nearly crying and wailing from what we experienced. He opens the back door, drags me out from the car, and spins me around, unlocking the cuffs from my wrist. I rest my arms and head on the trunk of the car, nearly crying myself. I've never felt that kind of fear before, and I'm pretty sure Daniels hasn't either. Safe to say, we were both shaken up pretty bad from that experience. So shaken up that he let me go just before we both promised not to speak it. Word of what took place in the middle of that road. Car had no dash cam. He had no body cam, considering this was nearly 20 years ago. We had no evidence at all for what happened, so who would even believe us? After that whole unreal ordeal, I smartened up and always made sure to be home before sundown. As for Daniels, he got a transfer request approved to the next state over. He ran from the problem, which I wish I could have done the same, but here I am, haunted and uneasy every time I have to drive my own kids down that same road. There is just no getting away from it, even if I was to move out of this town. That fear feeling and the image of those big black round eyes would still most likely follow me wherever I go. Jake nudges the back door to the Ally while carrying a couple garbage bags and walks over to the dumpster and throws them in, letting out a sigh as he rests his arms on the edge of the bin, tired and worn out from the long day at the dinner, standing up straight to stretch his back, and lets out a yawn, and suddenly he hears the sound of running steps coming around the corner and sees two of the bullies from his school running towards him. "Oh, come on, man. I'm tired and sore. I can't do this right now." They sprint right by him with fear on their faces as he watches them turn the corner, puzzled, and wonders why they didn't beat him up like usual. Scratching his head, Okay then. Hearing another set of running steps running towards him, and sees Blake, the main bully of his school, running towards him, and slaps Jake upside the head as he's running by "Run, you fucking moron," and runs around the corner following the previous others. Jake holding his head, wondering why the running and panic in his bully's eyes. Ouch! Okay, that was weird. Just as he was about to turn around and head back inside, he hears the sound of growling, followed by the sound of more running footsteps. He turns to look, and from the end of the alley, a crowd of ravenous people running towards him, thinking it's some kind of stunt, and he laughs, thinking it's some kind of prank, until he notices the blood and missing limbs from several of the people in the crowd. Wow! 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 Jake starts to run down the alley as they nearly tear at his clothes from behind, screaming while running down the open street to see others running from the ravenous people, cars zooming by while crashing into streetlights and walls, the sound of gunshots heard in the distance followed by screams, and shouts, glass shattering with more gunshots. Jake runs into the open street watching it all unfold, not knowing what to do or where to run, when a car comes to a screeching stop in front of him, only to see Blake grab and pull him into the driver's side window. "What the hell, man?" Blake pushing his foot down on the pedal and speeds down the street, zooming past crowds of people running for their lives as some get tackled down. Half of Jake's body hanging out of the car window, and he feels a hand grabbing at his pants and tears them off, leaving his legs bare and kicking as Blake drives off into the night, pulling Jake over his lap as he drives at top speed, Jake trying to crawl over as his butt rubs against Blake's face, nearly making him lose control of the vehicle. "Get your pasty white ass out my face. I'm trying to drive here." Jake adjusts himself into the passenger seat, looking down at his bare legs. "White underwear and boots, damn it! The hell? What the hell? What the hell? What's going on?" Blake making sharp left and right turns and looks out the window. "I don't know, man. I was at the bleachers by the school with the others when we heard screaming coming from the other side of the field. We thought it was nothing, and then we heard helicopters above, maybe a dozen of them with search. Lights zooming past us, and that's when we seen them chasing a few people through the field, 5 or 6 of them at first, and it quickly turned into a crowd of those things running towards us. We got up and started running also when one of the people tripped, and those things literally tore that poor girl apart and eating her. I'm not sure where they came from, but we ran towards Main Street with those things behind us, and that's when we saw you in the alley. They swept through the town so quickly and tore up everyone in their path. That's all I know." Jake looks out the window to see more helicopters flying west. Dang. The town gets swallowed by zombies, and here I am with no pants. Blake reaches to the back seat and drops a bag in Jake's lap. Should be something in there. Have a look and put 'em on. Don't want you leaving skid marks on my dad's leather seats. Looking through the bag and pulls out a bundle of damp socks and tosses them out the window, along with smelly gym shorts. Don't you ever wash your clothes? Smells like a babushka restaurant in here. Blake looks at Jake and smacks him behind the head. Stop being a bitch. Put something on. Snarling while rubbing his head, and pulls out a pair of jogging pants, immediately putting them on with excessive room around the waist. Gross, they're clammy. Where we going? Blake wipes sweat from his brow, and they make into the highway with other speeding cars leaving the town. I figure we drive west, follow those helicopters to where they're going, and try to find a safe place and try to gas up along the way. Jake nodding his head. Good plan. That's smart thinking. Wait, what about your family? Shouldn't we go back for them? Blake focusing on the road. My dad's a drunk and a asshole. He's probably dead and eaten by now. Fuck him. I'm more worried about my Snuggles. My poor Snuggles. Snuggles. The hell is that? Jake replies. My pet rabbit. Jake starts to snicker. You have a pet rabbit named Snuggles. That's surprising. Blake smacks him once more. Shut the fuck up, he liked to cuddle, all right. What about your family, huh? Jake looks down at his sweat-soaked pants. Foster home since I was 5. Hardly ever see him. Always working, so don't really care for them, really. I'm sure they're okay. Dead don't matter, but heading west sounds like a good plan. I'm down. Blake looks at Jake as he looks back. Of all people to be stuck with, the school wussy. Jake laughs. You're the one who saved me, remember? I'm your responsibility now, asshole. Blake sighs while making a turn fuck. This is gonna be a long ride, I just know it.